Victor's door wasn't locked, so she looked inside and she saw the greatest shock of her life. Victor and his secretary Sandra were kissing and being intimate with each other. Once upon a time, there was a man named Victor. Victor was an orphan who lived a very poor and quiet life. He stayed in a small house and do many menial jobs just to survive. In the other part of town lived a lady called Grace. Grace was a very charming lady who worked in an oil and gas company and also had well-to-do family. She was the second and last child of her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Williams. She lived a very comfortable life. One day, Grace was driving out of town when her car broke down by the roadside. John was walking past at that moment when he saw this beautiful lady in distress. He stopped and asked her what the matter was. Grace replied and said, "It's my car. I don't know, but it just broke down now." John decided to help, and since he had little knowledge of car repairs, it was fixed in no time. Grace was overjoyed and thanked Victor non-stop. She was very excited and she said to him, "I would really like to pay you for your kindness and help, but I am running late for a meeting. Please give me your number. I will call you as soon as I am done and settled." Victor reluctantly gave her his number and they parted ways. 2 days later, Victor was in his house when his phone rang. He picked up and a very sweet voice over the phone sounded. It was Grace, the lady he met 2 days ago. She said to him, "Hello Victor, this is Grace. I hope you can remember me. We met 2 days ago. Thank you so much for your help. At that moment, I was on my way for a business meeting, and just because of you who helped me out, I got the contract signed. Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I would have lost it." Victor smiled and said, "Oh, it's fine. It's really nothing." So Grace asked him if she could take him out for lunch as a thank you for your help gift. Victor agreed, and a date was fixed. The day of the date arrived, and Victor put on his best outfit and headed out. He finally got there, a very fancy and big restaurant. He called Grace and she came outside to pick him. "Damn," Victor said within him, "this lady is gorgeous." Grace was looking so beautiful as she stepped out. She picked him and they both went inside. They had a very nice meal and conversation. They talked about everything. And that was when Grace realized that Victor was an orphan and struggling to make ends meet. From that day on, they talked on the phone every day. They would meet up, play games, and discuss about different things. It went on for a while until one day, Grace finally told Victor she was already falling in love with him. Victor also admitted that he had fallen in love with her but was unable to admit it because of his poor situation and he had nothing to offer. Grace was furious. She said to him, "What do you take me for? A gold digger? Why would he think such?" "Victor, I have a job, a very good job, and my parents are well-to-do," Grace said to him. Victor was happy. From then on, they started dating and talking about marriage. Victor was scared to meet Grace's family at first, but Grace encouraged him that it was nothing. Grace took Victor to meet her parents and they welcomed him with open arms. They talked for a long time and they loved Victor because he was super intelligent. Victor told them about his life, how he lost his parents and is all alone. They felt pity for him and promised to help him. In no time, the date for the wedding was set and the ceremony was grand. Grace's parents footed the whole bill and Victor was very grateful. The wedding came and gone and the couple were married and doing very well. Victor was such an amazing husband. He knew he didn't have money, so he did all he could to make his wife, Grace, very happy. He cooks very delicious meals, does the dishes, the laundry, and all other things. Grace was always very happy. Their marriage seemed to be doing very well. Many of Grace's friends will always tell her how lucky she is to have found such an amazing and good man as a husband. They would often laugh and say, Grace, where did you order this amazing man from? Me, I want to order. Oh. They will all laugh and continue with their conversation. Grace saw how intelligent Victor was and decided to enroll him in a program where she paid for his tuition and did everything for him. He was very excited and he embarked on his new adventure. It was difficult at first, but as time went on, he got better and did well in his academics. After 2 years, he graduated in business administration and development. Grace and Victor were very happy that finally he would get a good job. With the help of Grace's father, Victor secured a very good job where he was paid very well. And this made him very happy as he can now help and also provide for Grace and her family. Oftentimes, he would buy groceries and send over to his in-laws. Victor was doing very well, both financially and physically. He got so many multi-million-dollar contracts, which made him very wealthy. Life was going really smooth for him and his family. 5 years went by, and they celebrated their 5th year marriage anniversary. It was really amazing, and the progress was really remarkable as well. Now that everything seemed to be going well for them, both financially, mentally, and physically, Grace and Victor decided to finally have a baby. It was a great idea, as Grace's parents had always wanted a grandchild. Few months later, Victor was at work when he got a call from the house help that Madam Grace fainted and was rushed to the hospital. Victor left all he was doing and rushed over to the hospital. When he got there, he spoke to the doctor, and the doctor told him that Grace had been overworking herself and stressing as well, that she should reduce the workload so it doesn't affect herself and the baby. Baby? Victor asked in shock. Yes, the doctor said. Congratulations, Mr. Victor. Your wife is 1 month pregnant. Victor was overjoyed. He ran to the ward to hug his wife. After paying the hospital bills, they went home. Victor told Grace to immediately request for a leave from work and not to engage in any kind of work or anything that will stress her. He also called his in-laws and they were pleased at the news. Victor took so much care of his wife, did everything she wanted, made sure she went for her medical checkup, and provided her with all she needed. However, things began to take another turn when Grace got to the 5th month of the pregnancy. She noticed big changes happening to her body. Her belly was getting bigger as her baby grew inside her. She also started gaining weight and needed to buy bigger clothes to feel comfortable. Along with these changes, Grace noticed her skin getting darker in some places. Her legs started swelling too, which made them very heavy and uncomfortable. She was also experiencing swollen face and pain all over her body. Emotionally, Grace sometimes felt happy and excited about becoming a mom, but other times she felt moody or easily upset. Her appetite also increased a lot. She found herself craving certain food and needing to eat often more to keep up with her body needs. These changes affected how Grace looked. Compared to the slim-looking lady, Grace had become really fat and dark, and her husband, instead of being there for her, started acting some kind of way. Victor, who used to be home early, started staying out late and not caring about how she was doing. He would always body shame her each time she tells him she was hungry. He would say things like, "See how fat you are and you are still eating too much. Better stop eating before you burst." Hearing him say these things felt like a knife was pierced through her chest. Grace would cry and cry. Before now, Victor could pick his phone calls in her presence, but now, whenever his phone rang, he would hurriedly go somewhere else to receive the call. Grace felt so unhappy, and she would cry most of the time. Her husband began to even stay days without coming home. When he gets back and she asks him why he wasn't home, he would say he had much work to do at the office. The attitude of Victor really made Grace very sad. And one of the things he did that made her even sadder was one day there was a business conference where they asked all top executives to come along with their wives or a partner. Victor didn't go with Grace. Rather, he went with the secretary in the office. When he got home and Grace asked him why he didn't go with her, he said, "Can't she see how she looks? How does she expect him to go with her when she looks so ugly, fat and dark?" Grace couldn't believe her ears. She was so heartbroken, but had to be calm because of her baby. Things weren't going well at all because of Victor's sudden change in attitude. He doesn't even talk to Grace anymore. Each time he comes home from work after spending a lot of time with friends, he would go straight to the guest room. Since he had stopped sleeping in the same room as his wife, Grace acts like all is well to her friends and didn't even tell them anything. She was scared they will laugh at her. She didn't even tell her parents. So one day, Victor had already gone to work. Grace was home alone with the house help. So, she thought of making a surprise lunch for him. She quickly stood up, prepared a very delicious meal, packed it, dressed up and went to Victor's office. When she got to the office, she noticed his secretary Sandra wasn't in her seat and didn't think much about it. She went inside. Victor's door wasn't locked, so she looked inside and she saw the greatest shock of her life. Victor and his secretary Sandra were kissing and being intimate with each other. She was dumbfounded and screamed as the flags fell from her hand. She knew Victor had changed. She knew he didn't talk to her much, but what she never knew was that Victor was also cheating on her. If someone else had told her, she wouldn't have believed. Sandra was shocked as she quickly stood away from Victor. But Victor was neither shocked or remorse. He just asked her angrily, "What are you doing here?" Grace replied and said, "I brought your lunch." Victor yelled and said, "Did I tell you I was hungry? Carry your ugly self and be going about." This broke Grace. She was so angry. How could Victor embarrass her in front of his secretary? She walked out of the office. She couldn't hold it in anymore, so she had to call her dad. In tears, she told her dad all she saw in Victor's office. Her dad was also angry and surprised. He wanted to go to Victor's office immediately, but Grace told him not to. Instead, he should come over to their house and pick her and take her to his house. Her father came around. They packed some of her stuff and the babies, and they went to his place. Victor got home that day. Didn't see Grace, so he automatically knew she was in her parents' house. Victor didn't care about Grace or how she was faring. Grace just told her parents not to bother about Victor anymore and they should just focus on the baby. While Grace was focusing on the pregnancy, Victor went about his life, moving from one woman to another, traveling everywhere and spending a lot of money. Having fun and enjoying his life, he literally forgot he had a wife and an unborn child. 9 months seemed like a long time, but it came anyways. Grace was sitting in the parlor when she felt a very sharp pain. She called her mom and dad, so they drove her to the hospital. Grace had a very beautiful baby girl. She named her Casey, and she was very happy. Her parents were also very excited to have welcomed their granddaughter. There were no complications, so Grace and her baby were discharged and they went home. Victor was still busy living a very reckless and disorganized lifestyle. He goes late to work, doesn't attend meetings anymore, and does however he likes. Weeks after the arrival of the baby, Grace thought it would be nice for Victor to know that she had already put to bed. So she called Victor to tell him. Victor didn't sound happy or excited, so he told Grace that he would want them to meet and have a discussion. Grace was glad. She thought Victor had finally come back to his senses and wants to resolve things. When they met, she was shocked. Victor presented to her divorce papers. He was filing for a divorce. He said he doesn't love her anymore. Victor said that how would a rich and wealthy man like him be seen with a fat and ugly woman like Grace? Grace told him she had finally given birth so she would work on her body and get her old self back. Victor ignored and insisted on the divorce. Grace wondered how her sweet, loving and understanding husband became like this. After some time, Grace finally agreed to sign the divorce papers. She was done with the whole insults, embarrassment and emotional abuse. They signed the papers. It was approved after a while and they went their separate ways. Grace prioritized herself and well-being. She took care of herself and her baby. She registered at the gym, watched her diet, exercised daily, did her self-care, and in no time, Grace lost excess weight and was getting back in shape. Her parents were there for her, emotionally, mentally, and physically. They would often tell her to leave baby Casey with them while she go about her business and other things. Victor, on the other hand, moved out of the house he shared with Grace and settled into his own place, maintaining his lavish lifestyle and frequently dating different women. At work, Victor's performance declined significantly. He repeatedly asked female colleagues out, frequently arrived late to meetings, and sometimes skipped them altogether. Despite multiple warnings from the company, Victor remained inefficient. Eventually, they had no other option but to terminate his employment. Grace, on her part, was doing very well. She became very beautiful. Her daughter Casey was growing and also doing very well. Victor became jobless, and his multiple women started leaving him one after the other as he began to go broke. He wasn't able to get another job. His bad record had spread across most companies. He started thinking and reflecting on his mistakes. He thought of the happy moment he had shared with Grace. He was thinking about calling Grace and apologize when he heard a knock on the door. "Who is there?" he asked. It was Sandra, the secretary who he had been having an affair with in his office. She broke a shocking news to him. She was pregnant. Victor was so angry. He was confused about everything. He knew he was broke and cannot afford to take care of a pregnant lady. He sent Sandra out of his house. Sandra went to her house and called her hefty brothers. They came back to Victor's house and gave him the beating of his life and warned him sternly that he must take care of their pregnant sister or else more beatings for him. Victor cried that day. He had to accept Sandra into his home. He did all sorts of petty jobs so as to bring money home for Sandra to take care of herself and the unborn child. Sandra didn't make anything better. She made sure to maltreat and treat Victor with so much hate and disrespect. Victor washed her panties, clothes, cooked, cleaned the house and all other stuff. Anytime he refuses, she would threaten to call her brothers. Victor was exhausted. He missed Grace so much and regretted his actions towards her. He had lost so much weight and looked so unkempt. One day, Grace with her beautiful daughter Casey had just finished shopping at the supermarket. They were about to enter the car when she saw a haggard-looking man. She was about to run, but recognized the face quickly. "Victor!" she screamed. "What happened to you? Why are you looking this way?" Victor looked at her and the little girl she was holding. He said, "Is this my daughter?" Grace was furious. She said, "Never you call my child your daughter. She is not your child." Victor knelt down and began to cry, begging Grace to forgive him. He said he is suffering too much. Grace ignored and hopped into the car with her daughter. She got home but couldn't get her mind off Victor. She loved him so much, but he betrayed her. Months later, Sandra finally gave birth, bringing a mix of relief and happiness to Victor. They were discharged and went home. Few weeks passed, and Victor began to notice some things about the baby. He began to doubt if he was the biological father of the child. He decided to do a secret DNA test. He went around to gather some money. He carried out the test, and to his shock, the baby wasn't his. He was so angry, disappointed and sad. He immediately picked up his phone and called Sandra. He promised to deal with her when he gets back home. But to his shock, on getting home, Sandra had packed up her stuff and ran away with the baby. Victor was lost, confused, frustrated and filled with regrets. He cried all day and night for weeks. He didn't leave the house. He was unable to pay for his rent, so the landlord came and asked him to move. Victor moved to the streets, moving from place to place with no hope in mind. Some people even mistook him for a madman. He was in so much distress, so he had to call Grace to apologize. Grace met with him. She felt so much pain seeing how he looks. This was once a man she loved with her whole heart, the man she took care of and made family, the father of her precious daughter, Casey. She felt pity for him and decided to help him. With her influence, she was able to get him a job in a small company and also a small apartment. But she did all this on one condition: he must never get close to their daughter, never call their daughter his child, and stay far away from them. He agreed because he was very ashamed to present himself as the father who abandoned his child and cheated on his wife. Grace also told him that she was getting married soon and relocating to the country where her new man lived. Victor was very sad, but it was for the best. He started afresh, living a life full of regrets. He had lost his amazing wife and beautiful daughter. Thank you for watching. This is Tales by Joyful. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can also turn on your post notification so you'll be notified whenever we post another story. See you next time. Bye.